Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intentions. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. In our previous session, we spoke about the awliya, who are the pious people. The awliya, they are not just pious people, they are more than that. They are people who, in summary, learn the personal obligatory knowledge at the very least, and then they implement it. They perform all of the obligations and they stay away from all of the haram. On top of that, then they do extra acts of worship. They do recommended acts of worship. They do a lot of these acts of worship. It might even be one, though, that they do for a certain period of time. These are people who then reach the status or the state of al-wilaya. Allah grants them al-wilaya. This is a state, if reached, then a person is safe from dying as a kafir. This person will die as a Muslim. This person will not be punished in the hereafter. And they will not be punished in the grave. And they will be under the shade of the arsh. And they will be in al-firdaus al-a'la in the hereafter. These are the awliya. These are the people that we are speaking about. Continuing from where we left off in our previous session then, we had mentioned certain attributes of the awliya, and we mentioned also certain stories. One of the things that we had mentioned in the past was that the awliya are people whose dua is answered. So let us continue from there, insha'Allah. As for the dua of the wali being answered, then there are many examples of this. This means that whenever they make dua, whenever they ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, believing and knowing with certainty that only Allah can create. Only Allah creates benefits and harms. While knowing this, they ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, believing this. Then what they asked for, they receive. The dua of a wali is like this. The dua of a wali is answered. An example of that is Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu. And he is also known as Sa'ad ibn Malik. Sa'ad ibn Malik al-Makki. He was from Mecca, al-Qurashi. He was from the tribe of Quraysh. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu was one of the 10. Min al-asharat al-mubasharina bil-jannah. He was one of the 10 that were given the good news of paradise in this life in one go. The Prophet mentioned alayhi salatu wassalam, for example, Abu Bakr fil Jannah, Umar fil Jannah, Uthman fil Jannah, Ali fil Jannah, Sa'ad fil Jannah, and so on. So he was someone whose dua was answered, meaning that if he made dua for someone, it was given to that person. And if he made dua against someone who was unjust, then that person would be given or afflicted with what dua Sa'ad had made against them. And this is because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu. He said, Sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allahumma, O Allah, ajib da'watahu. Allahumma ajib da'watah. O Allah, literally means answer his prayers. Meaning that make his du'as mustajabah. Whatever he asks for, Ya Allah, give it him. Allahumma ajib da'watahu. So his dua especially was answered. This was narrated by, or rather, it was narrated by Al-Hakim. So once Qais ibn Abi Hazim, and he was among the great followers of the companions. So you have the Sahaba, who are the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you have then you have at-tabi'un rather. At-tabi'un, they are the followers of the companions. They didn't meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but rather they are the ones that met the companions. So كان من أكابر التابعين, this person, Qais ibn Abi Hazim. He was one of the tabi'een or tabi'un, you could say. He met with the companions. He said, one day I was in Al-Madinah, Al-Madinah Al-Munawwarah, and I was wandering around the market until I reached a place that is known as Ahjar al-Zayt. Ahjar al-Zayt, it was a place in the past in Al-Madinah where that was known as Ahjar al-Zayt. And it is the place where the Prophet ﷺ prayed for rain, where he performed Salatul Istisqa. And likewise, he performed the Eid prayer here, as is mentioned. He said, I reached this place in Al-Madinah, Ahjar al-Zayt. It's close to Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, or it might even be inside now, what's considered Al-Masjid al-Nabawi after the extension. So he said, I met some people, and there was a man among them who was on horseback. And Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, radiyallahu anhu, was also there. He approached and he said, what's going on here? And they said, this man who is on horseback is insulting Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu. He's insulting Sayyiduna Ali, radiyallahu anhu. He's swearing at him. So Sayyiduna Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, radiyallahu anhu, stepped forward, and they opened the path for him so he could approach that person. So he walked and he got to that person and he said, Ya hadha, ala ma tashtimu Ali ibn Abi Talib? Why are you swearing at Ali, radiyallahu anhu? Alam ta'lam annahu awwalu man aslam? Do you not know that he is among the first to have embraced al-Islam? It said he was the first child to embrace al-Islam. Alam ta'lam annahu awwalu man salla ma'a Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Don't you know that he was the first person, or among the first, that prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? And he mentioned other things until he also said, Alam ta'lam annahu khatanu Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Don't you know that he is the son-in-law of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Because Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu anhu married the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then he said, Alam ta'lam annahu sahibu rayati Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam fi ghazawatih? Don't you know that Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu anhu would be given the banner of the Muslims? And this was a very important position, a very important status that would be held. It would be a banner that a person would hold, and they would call him Hamilur Raya, and it would be given to an important person. It would be given to a pious person, a person of merit, a noble person, an honorable person. And this was Ali radiallahu anhu in many of the battles. He was صاحب راية رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. كان حامل راية رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في المعارك والغزوات. So this person, as he's listening to Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu saying all these things, don't you know that Ali radiyallahu anhu was this and this and this and this? And in other words, to say to him, how dare that you insult him? So then, after mentioning all of that, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu turned to face the Qibla, because it is good to face the Qibla. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, خَيْرُ الْمَجَالِسِ مَسْتُقْبِلَ بِهِ الْقِبْلَةِ. The best way to sit and so on, the best way to face is towards the Kaaba. So he faced the Kaaba and he started to make dua. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Ad-du'a is a very clear, a very, if you want, raw and pure form of worship, because you let everything else go and you ask Allah. You turn away from other avenues and you rely on Allah. You ask Allah. You submit yourself completely and utterly in a way where your ultimate submission and humility and humbleness is to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. You let everything go and say, Ya Allah, give to me. So the Prophet said alayhi salatu wasalam, ad-du'a mukhul ibadah. Mukh, originally it refers to the marrow of the bone. Where is the marrow? Deep, deep, deep inside, in the core of the bone, right? So the Prophet said alayhi salatu wasalam, ad-du'a mukhul ibadah. Ad-du'a is a very deep, deep, deep form of ibadah, worship. And in another narration, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Ad-du'a is worship. What it means here is to ask Allah while believing Allah is the creator of any harm that could come to you and any benefit that could come to you. Allah is its creator. This is what is meant by dua here. Not merely calling upon somebody about whom you know that they are not the creator, but you want their help. No. A dua meaning when we ask Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So he made dua. He faced the Kaaba. He said, Allahumma inna hadha yashtimu waliyan min awliyaik. Oh Allah, this person, the one on horseback, is insulting one of your awliya, one of those people, Ya Allah, whom you eternally willed would gain your acceptance. Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu anhu. He said, فَلَا تُفَرِّقْ هَذَا الْجَمْعِ. Ya Allah, do not allow this gathering to separate حَتَّى تُرِيَهُمْ فِيهِ أَثَرَ قُدْرَتِكَ, until you show the people the great signs of your power. اللهم لا تفرق هذا الجمع حتى تريهم فيه أثر قدرتك. Do not let the gathering separate. Do not let the people disperse until you show them a great sign of your power. And remember, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Allah revealed, in other than the Quran, Allah revealed in a hadith Qudsi, من عادى لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب. That whoever takes a wali of Allah as an enemy, this person is bound for destruction. This person, if they do not desist, this person is bound for destruction. So as soon as Sa'ad made this dua, the horse or the camel that this person was on, it fell to the ground. Suddenly, as though it lost its legs, right? They just gave way. Like sometimes you might lose feeling in your legs and you go, right? It just lost its legs. As soon as he made dua, it lost his legs and it came crashing down to the ground. This person, he banged his head on some of the stones that were there. They were in ahjar al-zayt, on the stones that were there, and his skull cracked open. His skull, it cracked open, and he died. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. The awliya of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, this is their situation. Sa'ad is someone for whom the Prophet made dua sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, Allahumma ajib da'watah. What does a person need after that? MashaAllah. So this was narrated by Al-Hakim in his Mustadrak. So we see how if a person takes a wali among the awliya as an enemy, then they are bound for destruction. A lot of the time in this life, the punishment for that is delayed. Usually it's delayed even to the hereafter. But sometimes, like in this example, these people were shown the effects of a person insulting a wali of Allah. Insulting a wali of Allah, it's like waging war on him. It's like it is taking him as an enemy. Wal-'iyadhu billah. So in that happened, there was a great sign, a great lesson for the one that wants to learn. Then, on another occasion, sticking to the subject of the dua being answered, on one occasion, there was a man among Bani Umayyah, among the Umayyad caliphs, among the unjust caliphs from Bani Umayyah. And this was the case for most of the caliphs of Bani Umayyah. There were some exceptions, like Sayyiduna Umar ibn Abdul Aziz radiyallahu anhu, who was among the awliya. He was from Bani Umayyah, but he was not like them in terms of their injustice. So a caliph from among the caliphs of Bani Umayyah, an unjust person, once said, Inna hadhihi al-amwal naf'alu biha ma nasha' wa namna'u anha man nasha'. This wealth, he said, that we have, and he was talking about the Muslim treasury. The Muslim treasury, which is a place or money that is used for the Muslims, for the general well-being and betterment of the Muslim society worldwide, not in one locality. There is no Muslim treasury today because there's no caliph, there's no caliphate existing at present. So this person who was the caliph at the time, or who was a ruler at the time, he said, Inna hadhihi al-amwal, this money that's in the Muslim treasury, naf'alu biha ma nasha', we will do with it whatever we please. Wa namna'u anha man nasha', and we will prevent from it whoever we like. And this is alluding towards injustices. Subhanallah. Baytu Mal al-Muslimin, it's called Baytul Mal, the Muslim treasury. All the money is there. There are many things that are paid for through the Muslim treasury. Many things. Without giving any examples, you think about how government works, how a state works. Money is needed for many different things. Yes, some of those things, some of the people are cared for in certain ways. There is the fifth that is used, that comes from the war booty. Then there is the Muslim treasury. Okay, there are lots of things that need doing. There are lots of things that require money. Think about it. How do governments nowadays, when they take money from people, what do? They'll say, we're going to fix the roads, we're going to put up traffic lights, we're going to ameliorate or renovate a certain building, and so on and so on and so on, for the safety of the people, and so on. Anyway, So Baytu Mal al-Muslimin, it used to exist until, subhanallah, the caliphate was gotten rid of, and whatever happened, you know. And it's been about 100 years now since the Orthodox Sunni Islamic caliphate has existed. Subhanallah, Sayyiduna Umar al-Faruq, Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu anhu, he used to really take care of the issue of the money of the Muslims. He used to say, أنا في بيت مال المسلمين كولي اليتيم. When he was the caliph, he said, I am, when it comes to the Muslim treasury, I am like the one that is the carer of an orphan. I am like the one that cares for an orphan, who has an orphan under his care. The caliph, Islamically, it is religiously permissible for the caliph to take what he needs for his food and drink, because his job is what? To be the caliph. His job is not to get a job and do something on the side, right? The Khalifa doesn't have a side hustle, okay? All his attention is on the Muslim rule, on imports and exports, rice and wheat, dates, barley, the borders. Are there soldiers at the borders or not? Do they have enough people there? Is there enough water in all the different cities in this country or around the world? Are there Muslims suffering somewhere? Has there been a fire? Do they need medical attention? What's happening? All of this is on the Khalifa's mind. So religiously, he has a right. If he needs to eat and drink, then for his eat and drink, which is not much at all, he can take from the Muslim treasury. He has a right to do that. He can do that. But despite that, Sayyiduna Umar radiyallahu anhu used to say, I am, when it comes to the Muslim treasury, like the carer of the orphan. He said this because he was afraid to use the money of the Muslims. He was also teaching people a lesson, that when it comes to the Islamic law, you need to follow it properly. And don't be complacent. He said, if I need to take money, which is his right, he could. He said, if I need to take money, then what I will do is I will borrow it from the Muslim treasury, meaning, and he has a right to take it and not give that amount back. He said, I will take from it as though I'm borrowing, as though it's a loan, and I will put it back when I am able. Sayyiduna Umar, where do you find someone like that today? Where do you find someone like that today? Sayyiduna Umar radiyallahu anhu, he was the second best in this nation after Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, and after Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. So there was this man from Bani Umayyah. He said, we will do whatever we want. Look at the comparison. He said, we'll do whatever we want with the money of the Muslims, and we will prevent it from whoever we want. So Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu, when he heard that from him, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas stood up in the gathering. He stood up. That man saw Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, that he stood up, and he knew that Sa'ad is someone whose dua is answered. He knows who Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas is, radiyallahu anhu. So as soon as Sa'ad got up, and he got up to make dua, to raise his hands, that man, out of fear, he came off the pulpit that he was on, the raised platform that he was on. He came down and he said, إِنَّمَا هِيَ أَمْوَالُ اللَّهِ. He said, rather, this money belongs to Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. So retracting, going back on his statement out of fear that Sa'ad would make dua against him. And then that dua would be answered. This was narrated by Al-Hakim. MashaAllah, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala gives to whomever He wills, whatever He wills. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala gives to whomever He wills, whatever good He wills. So whoever takes a wali as an enemy, فَلْيَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ مُحَارِبٌ لَهُ, that this person, he will be destroyed. This was a hadith, in a sahih hadith, it is mentioned that one of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, among the muhajirin, or among the ansar, the muhajirin and the ansar, who were followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The muhajirun being those that came from Mecca, they migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah, and Al-Ansar, they were known as Al-Ansar, i.e. the supporters of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam, because they supported him in Al-Madinah. They were the people of Al-Madinah. Before being known as Al-Ansar, they were not known as Al-Ansar. But it's because they supported the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that they became known as Al-Ansar, his supporters. So a person should make sure that they love the Ansar and they love Al-Muhajirun, those original migrators from Mecca, because these ones are as-sabiqun al-awwalun, those that came first. They suffered great hardships. One should not take any one of them as an enemy or have hate towards them. The companions between themselves, these highly ranked companions, they did not have hate towards each other. So these were the pious companions. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu, he was the highest ranked among the companions after the four Khalifas, after the rightly guided caliphs, Sayyiduna Abu Bakr, Sayyiduna Umar, Sayyiduna Uthman, and Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu anhum ajma'een wa ardahum. He was the best after them. Now, so these were the highest ranking amongst the awliya. As for somebody like Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he was not amongst as-sabiqeen al-awwalin, meaning he was not amongst those that embraced al-Islam right at the very beginning. He was from the people of Al-Madinah. So he wasn't in Mecca. He was among the awliya. He wasn't in Mecca. So he didn't migrate with the people of Mecca. And he embraced al-Islam later, even after the Hijrah, while the Prophet was in al-Madinah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu embraced al-Islam later. He was considered to be one of the scholars among the Sahaba, though. He had so much knowledge. He had a great opportunity, and he got a huge share of the knowledge of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that others did not get. He embraced al-Islam and then spent, you could say you could say that word, a mere 3 years with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he gained so much knowledge, unlike some of the other companions who had spent 10 years or more with him sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but they did not benefit from as much knowledge, as hearing as much knowledge from him as did Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. And the reason for that was that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he freed himself up for Islamic knowledge. He completely farragha nafsah, completely freed himself up for Islamic knowledge. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu did not marry. He didn't have a wife. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu did not have children. He didn't have a son or a daughter that may busy him from learning the Islamic knowledge. He didn't have money, radiyallahu anhu. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام إن لكل أمة فتنة وفتنة أمتي المال. Every nation has a test. Every nation has a trial that they are trialed with. And he said, and the trial, the fitna, the trial, the test of my nation is al-mal. How it will be spent, how it will be acquired, and so on. Neither was he married, nor did he have any children, nor did he have any money, and he didn't have a job. He didn't have a craft. La ilaha illallah. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu farragha nafsahu li'ilmi Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He didn't have children that he needed to serve. He didn't have like this wives like the other companions did, that he would have to serve and provide for and so on. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu spent all his time that he could with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was poor. Sometimes he would sleep outside the masjid. Once he said to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam that the children of the streets, they come and they think I've died, so they kick me to see if I will come too. And they think that I have gone mad. They think that I am crazy. They think that I've gone insane. وَمَا بِيَ الْجُنُونُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ مَا بِيَ إِلَّا الْجُوعِ. But I am not insane. Insanity has not touched me, O Messenger of Allah, for it is nothing but hunger. He didn't have any money. He didn't have a family to busy him. He gave all of himself to the religious knowledge. What did Ash-Shafi'i say? لا يعطيك العلم بعضا منه إلا إذا أعطيته كلك. أعطي كلك للعلم يعطيك بعضه. Knowledge does not give you a piece of itself unless you give it all of yourself. Unless you give all of yourself to religious knowledge, you won't get a considerable amount of it. So he spent a lot of time with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah gives this status to whomever He wills. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani radiyallahu anhu used to say to his dependents, he used to say, take whatever you need of mine from me. So you can imagine his son, his daughter may come to ask him for food or something like that. He would say, take whatever you want from the person that I've appointed. I've appointed a person who has the ability to give you my money and so on. Give it to him. Go and ask him. He will deal with your deeds. And this is, he said, lighter for my mind, so I can continue being a mujtahid. So I can continue extracting the religious rules from the religious texts, as was his potential. This potential was there. And he awakened his potential. How? By not busying himself with things that could distract him in permissible ways. He diverted things from himself. So for one of us, we need to make time for the religious knowledge. It's a must. You can't live without religious knowledge, Islamic knowledge. We need to hear it regularly. It is like food for the soul. It is nourishment for the soul. If you go too long without it, you shrivel up, you starve. You don't know it, but you crave it. You don't know that because your nafs takes over. But then when you attend that one religious lesson, after a long time, you think, Subhanallah, I've been blind. Where have I been? You think to yourself, how silly of me. So we look at how these pious people did things. We specify a time when we're going to acquire religious knowledge, when we're going to review our religious knowledge. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he went all the way. He was in it for the long haul. He said he didn't have any money. He didn't have family that were depending upon him. He spent, and what did he get? He sacrificed all that. What did he get? He spent 3 years with the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, while the other companions were feeding their children or out working. Or where was he? With the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. That's why he narrated about 5,000 hadiths from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, whereas others narrated very, very few. Some others among the higher ranking companions, they narrated very, very few because he was always with him. You've got to be there. You've got to attend. You've got to be there to actually have a chance. What if you're not there? What if you're absent? You're not at the religious lesson. What if you don't expose yourselves to the blessings? The Prophet ﷺ said, Inna li rabbikum fi ayami dahrikum lanafahat ala fata'arradu laha. Indeed, in these days that exist, Allah created blessings in certain places, in certain times. Expose yourselves to them. If you don't expose yourself to it, how are you going to get it? Like if there was a room where there was a lot of musk, it was in the form of, it was sprayed everywhere, this pure halal musk. And you wanted to smell like musk, but you wanted to sit upstairs in your room and not come down to that room where it is. How are you going to get it on your clothes? You've got to expose yourself to it. If there are blessings that are descending and there are angels in a place, There are angels descending and attending, and there are mercies and blessings there, like a religious lesson, actively in the centers, in the AICP centers. They're there for the service of the people. If a person doesn't expose himself to that, how are they ever going to attain that blessing? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a person to want something but then not expose themselves to those blessings, as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. He said, "Ala fata'arradu laha." Won't you expose yourselves to those matters? Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, Allah created a special merit within him. And if we can't be exactly like Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, then we can try and incorporate parts of what he did into our lives. But actively we must do that. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu was known as Abu Hurairah because Hurairah is a way of saying small kitten, the one that cared for the small kitten. He would care for small kittens. He would put them in his sleeve. And he would care for them. He would feed them. And when the time came for them to sleep, or when the time came for him to sleep, he would put the kitten on a tree and it would sleep. He would do this at Maghrib time. Then, and this was before he embraced Islam, the Prophet ﷺ would sometimes refer to him as Ya Aba Hir, oh, the one with the kitten. Ya Aba Hir, kada. And he would love that from the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine that. Allah, Allah. The Prophet used to say to him, Ya Aba Hir. Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu embraced al-Islam. Then after that, he didn't turn to the kittens or anything related to the dunya. La. He started to learn religious knowledge. Like we said, that he is the person who related most of the hadiths of the Prophet, the most hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, radiyallahu anhu, akhadhtu min rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I learned from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam wi'a'ayn min al-ilm, like two containers of knowledge. أما الأول فبثثته لكم. As for the first container, then I spread it between the people. I narrated it. I conveyed it to the people. وأما الثاني لو بثثته لقطع مني هذا البلعوم. He said, as for the second container, were I to spread it among the people, then this would have me killed. Why? Because not everything that a person knows he speaks of. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu lived in a time of tribulations, where sometimes speaking out would get you killed over certain things. And the Prophet ﷺ said, لا ينبغي للمؤمن أن يذل نفسه. A Muslim should not degrade himself. They asked, وَكَيْفَ يُذِلُّ نَفْسَهُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ? And how would a Muslim degrade himself? He said, يَتَعَرَّضُ لما لا يطيق من البلاء أو يتعرض من البلاء لما لا يطيق. A person, a Muslim, would degrade himself by exposing himself to a harm that he cannot bear. Like if someone was to go out by himself, go out against an unjust government and say, it's me against the government, by himself. Hypothetically speaking, if there was an unjust government and he went out by himself, just him against the whole government, this is degrading oneself because one would be harmed. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala gave Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu special blessings in the life of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Once the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ayyukum yulqi rida'ah, who among you, he said to his companions, who among you who were there at that time, who among you will spread his rida? So imagine people were wearing, he was wearing a shawl. He was wearing a rida, yani a shawl. And so the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, Ayyukum, who among you, yulqi rida'ahu, will spread his shawl on the floor. So Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he rushed, he took off his shawl and he put his rida down, his cloak. He put it down. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam recited some of those blessed words without people being able to hear. These words were very blessed. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu put it down. The Prophet recited sallallahu alayhi wasallam on this cloak. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu said, بعد هذه, after this, صرت لا أنسى شيئا يقوله رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. After this event, after this occurrence, I did not forget anything that I would hear the Messenger of Allah say, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Sometimes someone might ask, well, how is it that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu was able to memorize and convey more than 5,000 hadiths by himself from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when there were people who were Muslims or had been Muslims longer than him? He embraced Islam in Al-Madinah. He accompanied the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam for 3 years. That means that he would have embraced Islam when the Prophet was 60, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, after Badr and after Uhud and after Al-Ahzab, Al-Khandaq, and so on. 3 years. Someone might ask, how is that? That's because these words that the Prophet spoke, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they contained immense blessings. Allah created that. In Arabic, Allahu a'tahu sirran. Allah created immense blessings. If you want to say literally, Allah created a secret for him, meaning it's something that we don't know what the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, but it was a special merit that he was given. So the awliya, they are given special matters. One of our shaykhs said that I was wanting to go to Damascus. So Shaykh Abdullah al-Harari rahimahullah said, go. When you're there, meet with such and such shaykh. There is a person there. Meet with him. So the student, he went and he met with this shaykh. The student said to him, or rather this shaykh, this wali, said to him, and look again, making the point of Allah, whomever He eternally wills to guide, they are guided. Whomever He eternally wills to instill immense blessings within, they are given it. Without explanation, they are given that. Allah does whatever He wills, tabaraka wa ta'ala. So if one is in a situation of, wait a second, how is it that this person is so lucky to have seen Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, or they are so lucky as to having been given special attention by some of the top religious teachers in our times, or that the awliya love this person, or how is it that they get this opportunity? Rizq, nasib. It is what Allah has eternally willed. We must love that for him or her. We make dua for them. We are pleased to see our Muslim brother or sister in this good situation where they are loved by the awliya, where they are given special merits, where they have special blessings instilled within them. We hear about these things and we wish that we had these things. We wish that we had a high rank. We ask Allah for forgiveness. We ask Allah to grant them more. We ask Allah to grant us something similar, but we don't hate on that person for this thing that they've been given. Many selves, many nufus are sick. They are diseased Many hearts are diseased. So it's difficult for them to see other people happy. Allah gives to whomever He wills. If Allah wills to give to you, you shall be given. Even if people don't know your name, even if people don't recognize you, even if people don't notice if you don't attend, and they don't notice if you do attend, it doesn't matter. Allah gives to whomever He wills. This Shaykh, this Wali, told the student of Shaykh Abdullah and others, he said, I was in America. He was somebody who spoke American English fluently. He said, and this is way back, 50, 60, 70, 80 years back perhaps. He said, I was in America and the awliya, they brought me from America to Syria, just like that. They brought me from America all the way to Syria, just like that, in an extraordinary way. Okay, why him? Rahimahullah. Why him? Nasib. Allah grants whatever He wills to whomever He wills. And that would be a test for us as well, to condition our hearts, to accept that for those people, to ask Allah to raise the rank of those people, to ask Allah to support us by virtue of the rank that Allah gave to those people. It's a test for us. How are we going to behave? Are we going to hate on those people? Are we going to grimace every time we hear their name? Whether the person is alive or not, whether they're with us in our city or not. Are we going to become envious and jealous? La. So he said, Al-awliya tayyaruni. Literally, they flew with me. They brought me. Not on a plane, huh? They brought me to Damascus. Shaykh Abdullah said that when people are chosen like this, why? Allah knows best. When they're chosen like this, and then they become awliya after working hard. Shaykh Abdullah said they can learn the religious knowledge in 3 days. The awliya take care of them. And the awliya, the scholars among them, they teach them in 3 days the personal obligatory knowledge. And that's not hard. It can be learned in 3 days. It's not difficult. Someone who wants to change and gives it their all, they can change their situation in one night. They can go from being somebody who is lazy and a time waste. They can go from that to being someone who نار الشوق تتوقد في قلبه. الهمة, literally the flame of the desire to reach piety, it is ablaze in their heart. There's like a fire in their belly, and they begin to embark upon this path. It can happen overnight. Just like that, it can happen overnight. So a shaykh, this wali of Allah, he was brought like that. Shaykh Abdullah said that these people, they then implement the religious knowledge, stay away from the haram, perform the obligations, do extra acts of worship, and they reach al-wilaya. He said that some people, he said, بعض الناس يقفون على الباب على باب الولاية قبل الوصول للولاية 20 سنة. قد يقف الواحد 20 سنة. One of them might wait at the door of al-wilaya until it's eternally willed, that point where it's eternally willed that he gains the acceptance of Allah. They might wait on the door, at the doorstep, for about 20 years before they are granted al-wilaya. So it depends upon how it's facilitated for them by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. It is not something easy to reach al-wilaya, but it can be done. One should exert their utmost effort. What is 30 years compared to everlastingness? Imagine this. You've got 60 years to live on the earth. You live it in a mediocre way. Yeah, you pray, pray your obligatory prayers. That's fantastic. That's good. But then you just settle for that. When, okay, if you die as a Muslim, then let's say you have this rank in paradise. Whereas if you had tried a little harder, if you had prayed more of the optional prayers, if you had woken up in the night, let's say 3 nights a week to pray in the night, you pray al-Isha, you go to sleep, you wake up before Fajr, you pray, you sleep, you wake up for Fajr, like that, then instead of your rank being here, it would be all the way up there. Imagine that. Which is good. A person will be in paradise and they will never get bored and they will never become uninterested in things. But imagine the rank that a person could have. Why would a person waste their time in this life? Why would a person do that? And it's not one of us, like I said in the previous session, who says, yep, that person's a wali. I know it. I feel it. If we ourselves are not pious, if we ourselves are not pious, and if we are pious, then Allah knows that. A person should always accuse themselves because the heart fluctuates. The heart fluctuates a lot. A person can move from sincerity to insincerity very quickly and back and like this. So how would one know if one's deeds were accepted by Allah, if a person was rewarded for those deeds? How does a person know that? Rather, those that identify people as awliya are the awliya. Shaykh Abdullah used to refer to them as ahlul khibrati wa ahlul qulub, the people with enlightened hearts. These are the pious people. These are the awliya. There is something that the awliya have where they can recognize others among the awliya, others among the pious people, as though their hearts are connected. As though their hearts are connected. One of our shaykhs, he said that I told Shaykh Abdullah that I'm going to the maqam of a pious wali, someone who's known to be a pious wali among the awliya. So Shaykh Abdullah said that, did you meet the people who are awliya there? So the student said, Maulana, whenever I go, people, they come out to me and they ask me for money. The poor people, they come and they ask me for money. So I kind of get put off by that. So I tell them no. I don't know how to recognize the awliya. So Shaykh Abdullah said, Ahlul Khibra, the people literally of experience, the people of Al-Qulub, the ones with hearts, but it's specific terminology. The ones with these really enlightened hearts, they recognize them. Not that the student doesn't have an enlightened heart. That's not what I'm saying at all. But this is something that exists among the awliya. Shaykh Abdullah was once in Egypt, rahimahullah. And he was reading, as was his habit. He was reading in a book. And he was on the first floor of a building in somebody's house. He was reading a book. And a person came from the street. He came and he saw Shaykh Abdullah in the building. So he started to wave at him. So Shaykh Abdullah, he looked at him and he returned to reading. And then he said, this man, he is among the majadhib, meaning this person is a person who reached al-wilayah. He became one of the awliya. And then because of his deep love for Allah and the Messenger of Allah, he lost his mind. And that happens to a lot of the awliya, a lot of them. Those who are not, let's say, as firm as some of the others, like Shaykh Abdullah and others among the awliya, some of them lose their mind. These are known as majadhib. Their bodies remain blessed. Extraordinary matters might also occur from them, but they don't have their mind. So it's not advisable for a person who doesn't have the proper religious knowledge, deep religious knowledge to sit with these people. Why? Because they might say something wrong. And a person who sees them doing extraordinary matters might say, yeah, so what they're saying must be right. Because otherwise, how would these extraordinary matters occur if Allah didn't accept what this person says? So anyway, this person is known as majadhub. There are more things we can say about this later, inshallah, about majadhib. But Shaykh Abdullah, he looked and he said, هذا من المجاذيب, and he continued reading. How is that? One of our sheikhs said, is it that it's as though they have like a scan. They do it's not like that, but it's like they do a scan and they see that this person is among the awliya. La ilaha illallah. Once, how would a person know a person looks like another person? There are special blessings that Allah creates within some people. Shaykh Abdullah was once in Al-Madinah, Al-Munawwara, and he was walking on one side on the pavement, and there's another person walking on the other side of the pavement. They passed each other. Suddenly Shaykh Abdullah stopped. He stopped, and there was a student with Shaykh Abdullah. He was watching. He said, I was watching. Shaykh Abdullah stopped, and I looked at the other student, the other person was walking across the street. We didn't know him. And he walked past us. He also stopped. And they're both looking the other way. Then they turned around, and Shaykh Abdullah crossed the road, and he went to meet him. He went to speak about certain matters with him. La ilaha illallah. Allah yarzuquna al-wilaya. Allah yataqabbal a'malana. Allah ta'ala yahfazuna wa yuwaffiquna lil-amal as-salih. Insha'Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, we'll stop here today. And we will continue, insha'Allah, in our next session, also about the awliya, when we'll mention some other matters, insha'Allah ta'ala. Allah yubarik bikum. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Let us recite Al-Fatiha for the sake of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and send the reward of it to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and to the great awliya of this nation, and especially to Shaykh Abdullah radiyallahu anhu, who was the reason for this knowledge to get to us. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم أوصل مثل الثواب ما قرأت إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، وإلى بقية الأنبياء والمرسلين، وإلى أولياء هذه الأمة بالخصوص الشيخ عبد القادر الجيلاني، وإبراهيم الدسوقي، وأحمد البدوي، والإمام أحمد الكبير الرفاعي رضي الله عنهم، وبالخصوص الشيخ عبد الله الهرري رضي الله تعالى عنه. توفنا مسلمين وألحقنا بالصالحين، آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الله يبارك بكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.